Hi, it's Nina Concepcion here, founder of The New View and author of the upcoming book, The Naked You. So what I'm going to be talking about is how to overcome fear. So I found that I have a 6-step process as to how I'm able to overcome or face my fear. The first step would be just having the awareness that you have that fear. So when you find yourself being controlled or being overwhelmed by a certain feeling, you need to know what that feeling is. You need to know that that is fear, and that whether it's giving you a tightness in your stomach or making you feel sick, or whether it makes you feel highly uncomfortable. I think first you just need to know what that fear feels like for you to know that it's your own fear. The second step of being able to work through your fear, I believe, is to have the understanding that, like what Tony Robbins says, fear is false evidence appearing real. A lot of the time, fear is really just the idea of what we have in our head, whether it's the anticipation of fear, so anticipation of pain, because we don't actually know whether or not something's going to be painful. A lot of the time, it's an expectation that you think is going to be really painful, and maybe a lot of the time it actually may not be. How many times have you feared something will happen and it wasn't actually as bad as you thought it was when you actually did it? And you thought, oh, it wasn't that bad. So the fear, it's funny, it actually gets bigger and bigger the more you procrastinate it. The longer you hold on to that fear, the bigger it gets, because you play this story in your mind, and then the fear just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's quite interesting. So I think being aware and realizing that it's just a mental concepts that we have in our head of where that fear comes from. And it's okay, you may not necessarily always be able to talk yourself out of what that fear is, because it's only a logical level. It's not necessarily an internal, emotional and subconscious level. But I think it's just still important to remember that it's not as real as you may think it is. It may seem real, but it's just false evidence appearing real. Also realizing that when we have a lot of fear, we anticipate what we think it's going to be like in the future, when that's not being present. Where are we actually experiencing pain at this moment, or are we anticipating the pain of what we think we might have in the future? I think once you start really looking at it and you actually face what you think you're scared of, it actually starts dissolving a little bit. Maybe not completely, but it does, for me, it does start to. Also, the more you get to know yourself, the more you find where that fear comes from. Does it come from a fear of abandonment, a fear of not being loved, a fear of rejection? Because we all have the same fears. And with our fears, I think it's important to understand yourself and really know where does that fear come from, because when you start facing it, you can actually start combating it. If you don't understand yourself and you don't know what you're driven by, and we are driven by a lot of our fears that we don't even realize, if you're not conscious of that, then you're not going to know. So I think it's important to know that. And for me, the third step for facing your fear is having faith in yourself, because a lot of the time we don't know what's going to happen in the future. Like, we're in the unknown anyway, and when we scare ourselves into thinking it's going to be harder or more painful than it's actually going to be, that doesn't put a positive expectation on ourselves or facing our fears. So I believe it's having that positive expectation of, not being naive that nothing's going to go wrong, but just understanding, I'm going to hope things will work out for the best. And even if things could be painful, I'm still going to be okay. There's a really good quote by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, I think her name is. And she said, when you're standing at the edge of all the light you know, and you're about to step into the darkness of the unknown, faith is knowing one of two things. One, that there will be something solid something solid for you to stand on when you jump. And the second thing of knowing is that if something isn't solid for you to stand on, then you'll be taught how to fly. And that's really what faith is. It's knowing that you'll be okay no matter what. You don't necessarily have to know all the answers. But it's knowing that you'll be okay regardless. And that does take time to build, and just like a muscle, the more you use it, the stronger your faith will get. Step 4 would be, when we have fear, we focus a lot on what we're going to lose. If we focus more on what we're going to gain, if you have a fear of, for example, going skydiving, something as simple as going skydiving. Yes, you know, it's an innate fear that we're not supposed to be jumping out of planes, so of course our whole body is telling us that we're not supposed to do it. But how are you going to feel after you accomplish that fear? How would you feel about yourself? Will you be proud of yourself? What kind of person would you have become because you faced your fear? So what will you gain by doing it? You know, even if you have a fear of losing weight, and maybe you think that if you lose the weight then something will happen, you anticipate something's going to happen, a lot of the time it may, you know, like you're focusing on what you're going to lose instead of, you know, if I lose more weight then maybe like it's going to increase my confidence, I'm going to feel a lot better about myself, I'm going to be able to wear different sorts of clothes. So I think it's also understanding the gain. There's another really good quote, I'm not sure who said it, but you know, they said, don't aim to be a millionaire, aim to be the type of person you need to be in order to make $1 million. So it's all about the journey and the person that you have to become to get there. And I think the more that we focus on what we're gaining in the present moment, and where we're actually going and where we're striving to, it actually fuels our confidence to be able to face our fears. Because, you know, on the other spectrum, if you don't face your fears, you know, how many people have you met in your life that are like, oh, I should have done this, I could have done that, I would have done that, they, you know, shoulda, woulda, coulda, and they don't actually do anything, and then they end up living the same day of their life every single day. Like, they're living the same day every day, and, you know, they're not revitalized, they're not happy, they're drained, and then you wonder why they don't have any confidence. It's because the more you do things that are going to make you confident, the more confident you get. You don't just get confidence out of nowhere a lot of the time. A lot of the time, your actions are what fuel your confidence. So, you know, like what Michelle Bridges says, which is actually my step number 5, is just do it. So it's a lot of the time you can get paralyzed by thinking about something and just having a lot of analysis by paralysis, because you're constantly just thinking about what you're going to do, how it's going to be painful, and you're analyzing the entire situation in your head over and over and over again. You know, and I've done this before, and I still catch myself doing it. So I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but I think it's just being aware of it, because it doesn't matter how much you think about something. If you don't change it, and if you don't take action, nothing is going to change. It doesn't matter how much you think about it. And that's why that step, just to take action, is so important, because that's ultimately what's going to help you move through your fear. Regardless of what fear it is, once you start doing it, everything else starts to get easier. Every other fear starts to get easier. It's quite interesting how that works. And the 6th step to facing your fear is actually seeing, after taking the action, actually seeing the pain start to dissolve, feeling that your pain is actually disappearing, which is quite strange. And it's not to say that you're not going to have another fear later on, or that same fear may not come up in another instance, because a lot of the time it still does. But you have that little bit more confidence, you have that little bit more faith, you have that little bit more confidence in yourself that, you know what, I'm pretty amazing and I'm facing my fear. And you'll start to see your life getting that much more meaningful, that much more fulfilling, and you living a life with a sort of vibrancy and energy that you didn't realize you had before, simply because you just faced your fears. So to sum up, step 1 is just being aware of it. Step 2 is realizing that it's just false evidence appearing real. Step 3 is having the faith that you're going to be okay regardless. And, you know, looking on the other side of other side of fear, if you ask anyone who's faced their fear, on the other side of fear is the results they want. So it's, again, focusing, step 4, on what you're going to gain by facing your fear. Step 5, just do it. Take action. And step 6 is looking at what changes you've made and actually patting yourself on the back and telling yourself that you're proud of you for doing that. Because a lot of the time, somebody may not tell you that they're proud of you. And, you know, I'd like to think that there are going to be some people in your life that are going to tell you they're proud of you. But at the end of the day, it's important for you to be proud of yourself. So I hope that helps with, you know, helping you guys figure out how to overcome your fear. And if you have any questions, or if you wanted to get some more information, feel free to contact me. You guys have my Facebook, and I will talk to you soon.